Hello everyone, this is Dan Kamenstein. I'm going to go through a quick CBL faculty orientation video, or as I'm calling it, a day in the life. We've gotten quite a bit of feedback, especially from those who are starting CBL for the first time, asking how does this actually look in practice? And short of being able to run everyone through a full CBL session or videotape, everything that happens, I thought I would spend a little bit of time just talking through what each day looks like and what I do as a CBL faculty member to kind of prepare for each session, what goes into each session, how all those components that we've talked about fit in. So I'm going to walk through this and just share my screen and kind of show you what I do for each portion. So I'll start out with before Monday. So remember that the CBL case unfolds over the course of the week. So if I'm a Monday morning facilitator, I will try to look at all the material before Monday. What that means is, as I decide, well, what do I need to know? How do I orient myself? One of the first things I do is ask, well, what are the students doing this week? And I'm going to pull up D2L. So D2L is a primarily student resource, and this is really where the students are going to interact with the curriculum as a whole. There is very little that you need to do, if anything, as a faculty member in D2L before the CBL case. However, if you want to know what the schedule is for the week, you can access that via D2L. So here's D2L. I log into D2L. I get a main page, and I'm going to go to our Class of 2024 pre-clerkship. So we'll also have a Class of 2025 pre-clerkship once that's built. But if I click here, I get to the main D2L page where all of the materials are. So this is everything the students have in terms of the courses. If I click on courses, I can find where I am. So I'm going to use the example for this session of the GIGU endocrine module, which we just finished. I'm going to give that as an example here. So all of the material having to do with that module is right here. So if I'm facilitating week 39 of the curriculum, I would look here. And again, how would you know what week it is? You will know because we will send out a reminder each week about what week of the curriculum you are. So you know that you're in week 39. If I want to know, well, what's going on with the students in week 39, I can click on the module schedule and I can pull up every week of the curriculum. So here we see week 38. So I'm going to week 39. I'm going to scroll all the way down. And this is really designed as a clickable link. So the students and you as a faculty member can also get to what are all the PowerPoint slides that have been given. So if you want to know what's going on, we're in week 39. I'm preparing for my Monday morning CBL session. So I'm going to look and say, well, what's going on this week? And I get a sense of, okay, they're going to be talking a lot about the intestines. So we're going to do some vitamin absorption. We're doing some GI histology. We're doing some pathology as well of the GI tract, talking about some viral infections, some disorders of the small and large intestine. So I get a basic sense of what's going on that week. Is this essential for facilitating CBL? It is not essential. Is it helpful? It can be very helpful in terms of facilitating CBL because I have a sense of what the students are going to cover that week. So if some questions come up during my Monday morning session, I at least have a sense of where that might be covered. Now, the students also have access to this full schedule. And so this is something where you can ask them to pull up the schedule and see, well, where might we cover that? Again, this is purely just for my own personal orientation. So I'm looking at Monday morning. I orient myself to a little bit about what's going on for that week. Now I want to actually look at what am I supposed to do for that session. So I know that I have to facilitate Monday morning, and I want to look at the actual facilitator guide. So as we had mentioned before, the facilitator guide lives in Teams. So I pull up my Microsoft Teams. Here are all my channels. Here's the CBL channel. Again, this is the Class of 2024. We're going to build out the Class of 2025 very soon. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to click on my CBL Class of 2024 team. And here I have all of the different small groups. So if I am assigned to small group D, then I would see small group D. I personally have all of these small groups because I built them all out in Teams. But for you as a faculty member, you will only see the small groups in which you're affiliated. You'll also see that you have a faculty-only channel, and that's primarily where you're going to go to find your resources. So I'm going to click on faculty-only channel, and I'm going to click up here in the files section. So you can see that under faculty channel, if there's announcements that occur, we'll send them by email, but this is also a good place if you just have a quick question. You can see here that faculty tend to ask quick questions and they send it out to the whole group. And so if there's a question about, hey, what did people do about this? Or if there's some last minute piece of information that we feel that you need to know, we will often post it here. And if people are having trouble finding a resource that we've posted somewhere else, oftentimes a faculty member will say, oh, okay, well, I found it, here it is. All of the resources, however, live in files. So I'm going to click on the files, just like any other files folder. You can see I have multiple other subfolders. And as I had mentioned before, I'm not going to go into it in too much detail today, but your orientation materials all live in a file folder. Your class pictures all do. For the purpose of this module that I'm facilitating, I'm going to go to my GIGU endocrine module. That's where we are. And I conveniently have everything by week. And so I'm going to go to week 39. And this is the material that I will find in my faculty folder for week 39. So you can see that I have access to the article the students are supposed to read, and we'll talk more about that when we get to the Friday session. I have a copy of the student version of the case. I have a faculty version of the case. I also have here the QACs. So if I want to know what the QACs for the week, I have that. I click on that link. There I have the QACs. So I have the QACs there. Again, because this is a Microsoft product, these are all Microsoft documents. You can click on them and read them directly. If you want to download them, you can download them, and that way you have them individually. We also have what we talk about as the faculty development video or podcast, and this is where we have a faculty member who goes through the case and highlights some of the key portions of the clinical application, the histology, the pathophysiology. So that way when you read the guide, if you do have questions about things that you want to know more about, oftentimes our faculty then cover that in the faculty development video. So the first thing I'm going to do as a faculty member, and I'm about to do Monday morning, is I'm going to open here and I'm going to open the case guide, the faculty version. So here's my case guide. Now remember, the student version is just going to be what they see, but the faculty case guide is here, so I'm going to open that. And I can open it as a Word document. And for the just convenience sake, I'm going to open it without downloading it. But you can, as I said, download it and read it in Microsoft Word. So here I have the whole case. So I have the student portion, and then conveniently in the faculty guide, I have these stop signs, and that indicates to me as a faculty member where the students are supposed to stop and kind of discuss. What are they supposed to discuss? Well, we have in the faculty guide suggested questions that we put in bold and detailed answers that we put in italics of what they should be discussing when you ask them this question. So if the students go through this material and they freeze and they just aren't sure what to do, you can prompt them with some focused questions. If the students are asking good questions and digging into the case on their own, and they've already said, well, what type of diarrhea is this? You don't have to repeatedly ask the question. So here are lots of suggested questions. You can touch on as many of these as you want. If you feel that the students have covered one well without you asking, you can move on to the next question. If you feel that this question doesn't quite fit with where their discussion is going, you can wait and highlight that on your own and come back to it later in the case. It is really up to you as a faculty member exactly how to use the bolded questions and italics. We encourage you to make sure the students have touched on some of these things, but again, the order is really just a recommended order. So you can see here I have lots of information as a faculty member, and then I go to the next portion of the student case. So student case is just normal font, and so here's the next version of the student case, and there we are. So we've gotten through the student case, and then we've gotten to at the end of the student case, and then part 2, where I get to see the part 2, which will be covered in the afternoon session. So here I have, as a faculty member, a whole bunch of information that can guide me through how to facilitate that first part of the case. So as the pre-Monday morning person, I'm going to actually read the whole thing. So I'm going to read through this whole guide before I even facilitate even the part 2 section, so I have a sense of where this should be going. And this is where I'm going to look at all of the material. I'm going to see what kind of questions I'm supposed to be asking, and I'm going to go through the whole case. And I'm going to, so as a faculty member, I can see all of this information. So I'm going to read through the end of the case all the way to the end. And that's really, again, preparation material. So this is where I'm just preparing. I'm getting a sense of what is this case about. And then if I have any questions, my next step is, once I've read the faculty guide, highlighted any questions, then I'm going to watch the video. So I'm going to click on this link here, and this will give me a link to the video. So I'm not going to do it right now, but if you pull this up, this will pull you to Dr. Barrett's video. We have faculty members from multiple different departments that do these, and so they use sometimes slightly different video systems. So you'll sometimes find that these are YouTube links. Sometimes these are links to an Echo 360 podcast, but all of them will take you directly to a video that goes through the case. And so I'm going to watch that as well. So now I've read the case guide. I've highlighted what my questions are. I've gotten a sense of how the case flows throughout the week. I've looked at the faculty development video. Oftentimes, if there are slides that the faculty wants you to look at from a faculty development video standpoint, these slides are actually just literally the slides that Dr. Barrett goes through in her video. So if you wanted access to the specific slides, they're there as well. So these slides are really just her slides that she talks through in her video. So I have access to all that information there. So I'm going to review those things. How long does this take? The more you do this, the quicker this takes. For me as a clinician, reading through the case guide takes me about 30 minutes to read through the case guide. Watching the video takes 20 or 30 minutes, depending on how long the video is. And so within an hour, I've read through almost all of the materials. Now, when you're starting out, it may take you a little bit longer, but this is really just getting an overview of what's going on. You do not have to be the expert on all these things. You really just have to have a sense of what are the questions that I should be asking, and how do I prompt the student through those? Okay, so that's pre-reading. So I'm getting ready to go into my Monday morning session. So now here I am as a faculty member, and I am at my Monday morning session. I'm walking in to facilitate the Monday morning session. As a reminder, the students only have access to the student version of the case. And I'm going to pull up here briefly the student version of the case. We already saw the faculty guide, but here is the student version of the case. And so the students will be responsible, and they will do this from D2L. You don't have to pull up the case for them. They will pull this from D2L. So they're going to pull up the student version. Remember, you have access to the student version. So if you would prefer to see the student-only version, you can also pull that up. There is no difference in the text at all. It's just the faculty guide has all of the quote-unquote answers and the questions. So here I am, Monday morning, the students are pulling up the guide. They run through the case. We have given space where we expect them to stop. So we have not provided stop signs. You will find that as your groups go through here, they should be stopping more frequently along the way if they're confused, if they're not sure what's going on. If they're not sure what a term means, they may stop and say, can someone define that term? They may not stop every word. They may decide that as a group they want to read through the first full page and a half and then come back. We do encourage them to at least at some point stop and ask, well, what do we think is going on? What terms don't we understand? But as you can see here, here's page 1 and page 2, and then there's a natural break here. Again, this is where you will find the stop sign in the faculty guide, and you will be able to prompt them with questions if they don't come up with them on their own. Okay, so now here I am, I'm going through, and this is still my Monday morning session. So here we have some more data that we get. So the students have gotten an initial history, physical, and now they've discussed what they want to do next. Mostly that involves some labs and imaging. And so here, again, this is part of the Monday morning session. We've got some lab results, and in this case, we have no imaging results. So there we are, and we're at the end of our Monday morning session. This almost always takes 2 full hours for them to go through this history, this physical, go through all of these lab results. They do get a little bit quicker at this, but that's really all we go through in that Monday morning session. So as a faculty member, you're really helping them walk through that portion of the case. Now you noticed that we have after this, we'll have part 2 of the case. And here you can see there's part 2. So we've gotten through part 1, they've gotten their results, and we have mentioned multiple times that there are presentations. The students are supposed to identify knowledge gaps and decide what types of ways they want to fill those knowledge gaps. So they might not be sure, this is week 39, and they get a stool analysis, and so they see here, okay, these are results of our stool analysis. And they may decide, well, I don't know what goes on in a stool culture, and I don't know what is pathologic or not. And so they might want to do a presentation on common forms of diarrhea. And they might want to talk about what are the common forms of diarrhea. In that case, they would decide as a group, and you as a facilitator can help guide them towards what would be important knowledge gaps to fill and what types of presentations or what types of information they want to bring back to the group on their Wednesday session. They would then write these down, and they're encouraged to go off and start to figure out how they want to find this information. Remember again that if we go back to our D2L, some of these things in terms of disorders of the small and large intestine, lower GI pathology, some of these things might be covered in the course of the lectures. And so they may decide, hey, we think this is going to be covered in this lecture, and we're not going to worry about it too much then. Notice that the QACs, or the learning objectives, are not provided on Monday. We want the students to identify their own learning objectives that may or may not be exactly the same as the ones we identified, but we want them to start identifying some of those things. So Monday, they go through the case, they identify their own learning objectives or their own knowledge gaps, and then they figure out how they want to fill those knowledge gaps. Most of the time, that is in form of some type of presentation. So that's end of Monday morning session. So now here I am, I'm in the afternoon. So here I am as a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday afternoon facilitator, my Monday morning co-facilitator. So most of us have switched off at this point. So here I am facilitating the afternoon session. The students have already done part 1. They've facilitated that. They've decided what they want to present on. And so here we are, we're coming into part 2 of the case here. Part 2 starts out with an IPAS. Okay, so the students, here's the student version of the case, and you can see here, the students start out when they access part 2, they're encouraged to do their learning summaries. These are everything that they decided on with their Monday morning facilitator. So the students identify what learning summaries they thought they should do. The Monday morning facilitator helped them decide on those things, and they're going to present those learning summaries, and they're also going to do an IPAS. And they're going to talk about what their initial differential diagnosis was based on part 1 of the case. Again, these learning summaries are really student-driven. It is what they've decided that they want to do. The IPAS is a student summary. Now, if we pull back up to our faculty version of the case, so here I am on my faculty guide. How do I know that they're doing this correctly? Well, conveniently, if I go to the faculty guide, I have, again, part 1, and I have all the information that students have gone through and done with part 1. I have all of their information. And here I have an example of an IPAS. So if I am worried about how well the students did on the IPAS, I have a summary example. If I've never done an IPAS before, I have an example of what that should sound like. If they miss something significant, I can highlight it based on the example I have. So that is the initial stages of my afternoon session. I am in part 2. The students know what we should be doing as learning summaries and an IPAS. I know what I should be doing, which is the learning summaries and the IPAS. Now we go through part 2 of the case. So in part 1, we've gotten a history of physical, we've gotten some lab tests, there's been a differential diagnosis, the students have decided on what their next steps are. And then part 2 is primarily what those next steps are. So often involves further testing, a development in terms of how the patient did. Did they get better? Did they get worse? What types of interventions did the physicians do? And so you can see here, this is a diarrhea case. So this patient has gotten a colonoscopy. So we have some results from that colonoscopy of the abnormal. We have examples of normal. If you notice here, we have some pathology slides as well. If you're not a pathologist and you've never done this, that's convenient because Dr. Barrett has actually given us in her faculty podcast, she's actually gone through these and we have those PowerPoint slides. So if we aren't sure what these are and we want to help the students through this, we have our answers from Dr. Barrett already. The students, again, should be doing this. This is not for you to teach. They should be, and they are very adept at walking through this. So here we have more information. We have an operative note in this case. We have some more diagnostic tests. We have some more serology results. Again, our faculty guide is going to help explain all of these to us and highlight what we think is important for the students to know. And now here we are, we're at the end of the case. And so we've gotten to the end of the case and we're in the afternoon. So we're in part 2 and I facilitated this whole thing using my faculty guide. I've gotten to the end of the case. Again, often this takes the full 2 hours for the students to go through all this information and really talk through it. So the students have done part 1, they've done part 2. So now what happens? Well, what are these QACs that we're talking about? At the end of part 2, this is mostly in the afternoons. Sometimes if we have only 2 days of a case, then they might get the QACs after the first part. But primarily, they're going to see these QACs in the afternoon session. So that's my Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday afternoon facilitators. What are these QACs? Well, they're attached to the student version. They are also included in the faculty version. And they're also on Teams, as I showed you earlier. So here are some recommended things the students should have covered as part of their learning objectives. Now, why don't we give them to them up front? We don't give them to them up front because we want them to design their own learning objectives. The whole point of CBL is for them to design what they think are the important parts of the case and to talk through that with their group and decide. We provide these at the end of the second part so they can double check their work. What did they miss? What did they find? Most of the time, the first couple weeks, the students have some gaps. And then you, as the afternoon facilitator, can recommend, well, you guys didn't talk at all about the psychosocial effects of chronic debilitating disease. Why don't you present that? Why doesn't someone work on that for a Friday session? You could say, I noticed that you did a pretty good job of reviewing embryology, anatomy, and histology of the small intestine during the case. We probably don't need another presentation on that. So this is a double check. They did some things, they hit some of these they missed. The ones they missed are good fodder for a Friday morning presentation. So there we are. We're at the end of the second day. So this is the end of the afternoon session. So here I am. I've facilitated Monday morning, I facilitated Friday morning, or the afternoon session. Now I'm moving on to the Friday. And everyone has had a lot of questions about the Friday session. If you notice here in my faculty guide, how do I know it's the faculty guide? Because I have these stop signs, I have bolded, I have italic information here, which is not in the student case. So you'll notice both on the student side and the faculty side, all I have is a list of things to do. So we again have learning summaries, we have article presentation, we have a student-led discussion on the CBO reflections. We can encourage the students to review the key portions of the case, what went well, what could have gone better, and then talk about how did the material correlate with the lectures. So really this is primarily a learning summaries and then a debrief of how the case went. Most of the time what you'll find on the Friday sessions is that the students now do some learning summaries based on the quality assurance checks or the QACs that we provided in the afternoon. So most of the time what you'll find is they do some more presentations. It might not be every student, but they do some more presentations really based on, hey, these are the things we missed and these are the things we're going to present on. So I walk in Friday morning, my students are going to do a learning presentation on some of the psychosocial effects of chronic debilitating disease because they didn't touch on that during their discussions and they didn't feel like it was well covered in a lecture session. So that's what they might present on. Once we've done learning summaries, that's where the students will often move to the article presentation. If they decide to do the article presentation first and then the learning summaries, that's fine as well. If you notice, if we go back to, well, where is the article? The students have access to the article on D2L. They are given access to the article on Monday morning, which means they have the whole week to read the article. Most of the time, the groups are going to hold off on doing much with the article until Friday when they have a lot more time. If you as a faculty member want to read the article earlier, we encourage that. You'll find that the article is also, again, in our faculty only channel under the week 39. So we're doing week 39. So here's the article. So I'm going to look at the article, and this is an article that goes through some guidelines for prevention and treatment of traveler's diarrhea. So this is the article the students are going to review, and they're going to go through it and in a systematic manner. So how do I know where that is? How do I know how they're supposed to do that? This is going to go back to our faculty orientation material. As I mentioned before, all of this material is in here. If I want to know all the material I need for the weekly sessions, I find here. I'm going to get to my EBM checklist for the journal clubs. So that's in my material. If I want to remember what kind of group roles are available, that's in here as well. If I want a little bit better sense of how do I help my students with a differential, that's in there as well. If I want to know how do I help the students structure better review of the case, we have the graphic organizers that the students and faculty have access to here as well. So all of this lives in just our normal orientation material. So now we're in the Friday session. We have gone through the learning summaries as part of part 3 on the Friday session. We've gone through the article presentation. We can go through we can then go into a debrief session. A lot of Friday ends up being a debrief session. What went well? What could have gone better? How did the lectures fit in well with the case? How didn't they fit in well? What did the students think are the most important take-homes of the case? This is a great chance where you as a facilitator get to help them digest all this information. They get overloaded with a ton of information throughout the week, and this is really just a chance in a laid-back environment to digest that information and review the key points. If you don't feel comfortable doing this initially, we have plenty of supplemental material that will help you. One of the things a lot of the student groups have started doing is bringing in some type of interactive quiz. And so the students themselves will come up with a set of quiz questions, and they'll quiz each other, and they're very good at this. Dr. Tai has also kindly provided a set of prior PBL quiz questions that were used. Now, these are really meant to be practice questions, and the students often enjoy those as well. And so she will send out for each week a set of recommended practice questions. Again, it is optional. They're not required, but it is just more material if you're stuck on a Friday and you feel like you don't have enough to do. That's another thing you can do is go through these practice quiz questions. So that wraps up a Monday morning session, part 1 of the case, primarily around the initial presentation of the patient, students forming a differential diagnosis, creating a problem list, deciding on what labs and imaging tests to perform, getting some of that information back, and deciding what are the things that they wish they had known that they're not sure about, and then on the afternoon sessions, presenting those learning gaps that they self-identified, going through the next part of the case, and at the end, going through the recommended learning objectives or QACs. We use those two terms interchangeably, identifying what things they missed that they would like to cover on the Friday session, and then the Friday session covering those learning summaries, presenting the article that they've read in a structured format, and then going through a debrief session. So that brings me to the end of kind of a Monday, Wednesday, Friday sequence of events. I hope that helps clarify a couple things. I'm going to highlight a few other concepts here very briefly that I hope also will be helpful. So, as I mentioned, the faculty only channel in Teams is really a great resource. It has all of the files that you need here. It has a way to interact with all of your other faculty members. If you go to your specific channel, so if I'm in group F, I can also interact with my students here. So here you can see the students will often post things for each other to use, but I can interact with just my group. If I want to send my group, hey, I found this interesting podcast that I think would be helpful, I can post it here. So here you can see students posting kind of just some stuff they made up. So this is where I can interact with my specific group. Let's say I have feedback. I think a case went pretty well, or I don't think it went very well, or there's some other question that I have. You can see in the top here at general, I have options for giving general feedback to the curriculum. If I want to give feedback about a specific case, and we are asking groups to give specific case feedback, I'll click here, and here I get a feedback form. And this will tell me I want to do feedback on week 39, so I'm going to choose week 39, and I can say this was the chief complaint, so this was the problem, so that's the week, and then this was a diarrhea case. And I can say what I think went well with the case, what I could have been better. And we encourage you to have your students fill this out, and for you as a faculty member to fill this out as well, and that gives us feedback for what we should change for other cases moving forward, or how to make a case flow better. So there's our feedback forms. That's also something that we ask groups to do on Friday, especially if you have a little bit of extra time. Just ask your students to go through that and then do it. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes. Now, I'm going to pull up the class of 2025 schedule and the class of 2024 schedule, and I just picked an example week. And here you can see this is the class of 2025 schedule. So these are the new incoming students. Again, you can notice we have 3 small group sessions. One of the things that we mentioned is that the case wrap-up will also fall into this 2 hours. So what we were finding is on that Friday session that most facilitators said they didn't feel like there was enough material, even with a debrief, to cover all of that. They really needed 2 hours. And so you as a small group will get an hour to do that presentations, to debrief, to go through some quiz questions, and then we'll have a faculty member, a clinician, or a student who helped write the case go through a debrief session with everyone. And this will be a chance, so if you have a question about what happened with the case, or the students have a question that you felt wasn't answered in the faculty guide, oftentimes this is about clinical management. Why did we use X medicine instead of Y medicine? This is a good chance to ask that. So that occurs within the wrap-up session on the afternoon. So that's in the mornings. So that's built into that morning wrap-up session for CBL. So this is the class of 2025 incoming students. Again, your Friday morning session is in the 8 to 10. If I'm in the current class of 2024, again, 2 hours, this 10 to 12. This is where I'm going to do both my final debrief and also get to do a case wrap-up. So that's it. That's where all the information lives. Hopefully you found this helpful as an overall guide to what happens throughout the week, where things live. I will mention the last portion of this is reviewing students' reflection questions. So we are asking students to write a brief reflection essay at the end of each week that's based on the case. The students are the ones who do this. As a faculty member, my job is then just to review those. This is the one time as a faculty member that I'm going to have to access D2L. I will go back in here. So here's my class of 2024 pre-clerkship, and I have access as a faculty member to all of this information. One thing I'll just mention very briefly for the students is they have lots of resources here. So as a faculty member, you saw your CBL resources. The students also have that same folder here, and they have CBL resources here in D2L. So they can access all the same resources that you would see as a faculty member, but they just have those in a D2L folder. And so they have all that information as well. So you as a faculty member don't have to give them the evidence-based medicine resources or remind them about group roles or tell them how to do an iPass. All of that is for them to access. Now, as a faculty member, how do I review their reflection assignments? So this is the one thing that is a little trickier, but again, in D2L, I don't have to deal with any of this. I just have to go to assessments. I have to click on assignments. And then as a faculty member, I choose what week I'm in. So we're in week 39. And I'm going to go down here to week 39. And here's my reflection. And I'm going to look on there. And you can see that I have all the students have submitted a reflection assignment. So I can type in a student here. So I'm going to type in a student. And I'm going to search, so I can search by their last name, and then I would pull up their reflection essay. I'm just going to click on this, and if I click on that, I would get their essay. And there's a couple different ways to look at it. But really, for the purpose of this, all you have to do is look at what the students wrote on here. And again, for the purpose of this example, I'm trying to protect the student themselves, so I haven't shown you what they wrote, but you can see what they wrote here, and then I, as a faculty member, just provide a little feedback. Hey, this is a good reflection assignment. I think this made sense, and then I just click publish, and that tells the student, hey, I read your reflection question. So I go through these. The way I've done this with our co-facilitators is we split up the group. So if we have eight students, I take 4 and I read them. Usually I read them on the Monday after it's due. So I'll read those assignments, and then my co-facilitator reads the other 4, and we flip-flop back and forth. And so if I want to read it, all I have to do is type in the student, and then I can pull up their reflection assignment. So I'll pull up that reflection assignment, I'll view it right here, and then I'll write the feedback here. All right. So this is the end. That was a pretty lengthy podcast, but I do hope it helped clarify some of the questions or concerns that folks may have had. Again, we will be hitting some high points of this as we go throughout. This does feel like a lot, but I promise you, if you listen to this lecture once, and once you've gotten into the first couple weeks, this will all be very straightforward. And we've done it for a year now, and it's been fairly streamlined. So thank you again for all your help, for participating in this. We really look forward to having you all be part of CBL and to help us with teaching the students. This is one of the most rewarding things I think that is part of the new curriculum. We get a lot of chance to have some really small group interactions with the students, which are amazingly valuable, and they really do appreciate it. The last question I often get, especially from new facilitators, is saying, well, this is a lot. How do I find the right place in Teams? So Dr. Ty every week is kind enough to send out a direct link, as some of you asked about. Well, what's the easy way to do this? And the easy way to do this is Dr. Ty will send out a link saying, push this link here, and it will pull you directly to that Teams folder that has all the faculty information for the upcoming week. The reason I showed you this way is if you're curious and you want to look ahead a week, or you want to prepare and be sure, say, I know what's going on this week, but I want to know what's going on next week. We send things out kind of week by week, but if you want to look ahead or get a sense of what else is going on, going to that faculty Teams folder, you can access things, and as soon as they're available, that's where we post them. So this is Dan Kamenstein. Thanks again for listening to this. I hope you all enjoy this next year, and we look forward to seeing you in the classroom.